Welcome home, where we provide information, inspiration, and motivator after motivator after motivator. Hey, let me tell you, I appreciate all our supporters so far here at America's Next Motivator. When I tell you that we have a special guest today, I mean that without a doubt. Stay tuned, sit back, and take notes. And we're here. How you doing, Elliott?
Oh, man, I'm doing great. I'm having a great morning, brother. How about you?
I'm doing great, too. I'm having a good morning as well. I see you got some art in the background. Is that you?
No, man, that's my sister. My sister-in-law, she passed away, but she was an artist, man. She did a whole bunch of arts, and she did a couple of paintings for us, and I hang them on the wall all around my house.
Right. I mean, I can see the resemblance. She was truly a great artist.
Yeah, she was bad. Sister was bad.
Wow. Okay. And so where are you located these days? Where are you from?
I'm from the Bronx, but I live in Henrico, Virginia, which is right outside of Richmond, Virginia, Central Virginia.
Okay. What took you to Virginia from the Bronx?
Man, all right. So when I grew up, I didn't know my family very well, so I happened to run up on a cousin. I got to know him a little bit, and his family lived in Virginia. So I came down with him for a family reunion one year. He was in the Army at the time. I came to Virginia. It was the first time I'd been out of New York City. And, man, the air was clean. The birds were chirping. And I just said, look, I got to move to Virginia. So probably a year or so after that, I moved down to Virginia. I was in Chesapeake area. And I've been here for a bunch of years. I moved out and moved to California for a while. But, I've made a home in Virginia.
Right. Now, you already sound like an overcomer. I wanted you to talk to us about your childhood. What was it like for you, in your preschool, your elementary school years?
Man, it was a different world. My elementary school years was, we're talking about the late 70s, early 80s. It was a whole different time. It was challenging growing up in the Bronx, of course. I grew up in the part called the South Bronx.
Okay.
And at the time it was a little rough out there. I grew up on College Avenue, which was between Webster Projects and Grand Concourse. So if anybody's familiar with that area, it was pretty rough,
When you say rough, can you paint that picture for us? What do you mean by that?
I mean that, just children, just ignorant, lots of fights, a lot of problems back then. A lot of things were territorial. So you would have certain areas. If you were from a certain area and you went into another area, there could be problems depending on how well you communicated with people. Rough. And now there wasn't a lot of shooting when I was growing up. Back in those days, you usually would get a beat down. Most people fought with their hands, but in the time that I was growing up, that's when it was transitioning from, fighting with your hands to, getting in fight with groups and people having bats and, and chains and bottles and all that sort of thing. They were getting a little bit more creative with the violence. But, it was still a time where you could survive. You could get into a beef and you can go through and have some problems, but still survive and walk away. But it was rough. You had to learn how to handle your own. In the middle of the city, a lot of poverty. Although back then we didn't know we was really in poverty. So we just knew that we didn't have certain things, and television went off at night, so it didn't glorify all of the houses of the richest and famous like it does now. So we didn't have a projection of all of the things and the bling and the gold and all that was out there. So we didn't really know that we weren't we were doing without a lot of things. But it was a good time though. It was a great childhood though.
Okay, so it was a great childhood. I want you to kind of explain for me and our audience, how did you not know that you all were living in an impoverished community? How were you sort of naive to the actual reality? Were your parents doing the very best they could for you? How did that work out?
Well, it was a couple of different things. Back then we didn't have internet. So we weren't exposed to everything that was going on around the world in different places. Back then, we didn't have television. We didn't have cable television. Like I said, television went off at 10 o'clock. You got the bars and tones, and it just went off. So you only had a certain amount of time during the day where you had television, and the television shows, they weren't like reality shows and shows of the rich and famous, and shows where you see people with 20 different cars and inside, and it's big luxury houses. So we weren't exposed to those type of things. Although they were happening and people had those things, we weren't as exposed to it. So when you're living in the middle of the city, what you are exposed to are all of the neighborhoods that you're in conjunction with. Now, I'm from the Bronx, so which means that I went everywhere. I went to Brooklyn, Manhattan. If something was happening, I was going on there because we had the train. But the idea is that all of the neighborhoods that I went into were people like me. They were you had small families, you had houses, you had projects, you had apartment buildings, but by and large, they weren't that far apart. Like for example, you wouldn't see a housing area that was let's say where the houses were valued at $150, and then you travel 10 blocks over and the houses are valued at $500,000. It wasn't like that. All of our neighborhoods were pretty much impoverished. Especially the Bronx. The Bronx at the time had just overcome being burned down and all of the things that was happening from the 80s and from Reaganomics. So so I just didn't see it.
Can you explain for us what was Reaganomics? The first thing I want to say, for those of us who might be younger who are watching this, when he says the TV goes off, he's not saying that somebody turned the TV off. He's talking about a time when the actual programs ran out. There were no more programs, and so the TV pretty much went blank. Nobody turned it off; it went blank. But the other thing is, can you explain? Because I'm thinking like it was kind of like The Warriors a little bit. You remember that movie?
I do.
Yeah. And so he's talking about just a different era, an era of life that kind of produced these tough, wise individuals. I'm not talking about somebody who's quick and smart. I'm talking about somebody who's tough and wise. These are the types of environments that produce these types of people. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. So, in these times, you had to be able to learn how to survive. And I don't mean it in a way that, nowadays it seems to me that, survival is how to go around, how to overcome, how to, beat systems, how to con people, how to take over something that somebody has. And it's not quite like that. You had to be able to read people and read times, read situations, be able to understand when to go full force in them, when to hold your peace, when to walk away. Who were the people that you could latch on to, who were the people that you really need to stay away from. So it was a time period where you did use your mind a little bit more. We were a little bit more creative. We had games. We would go outside and play games, and if you had a Coke can or a soda can that was empty, you had about 10 different games you can play for hours and hours and hours on a day. So, it was a time where you made do, you took what you had, you made do, you became creative, and still tried to move forward, tried to have your fun, but still tried to move forward and find your place in the world.
Do you think that young people today, or even adults for that matter, understand the value of being able to read people, being able to read energy? We do emphasize the need for literacy, and we do emphasize the needs for reading actual books and writing. But I want you to talk to us about actually reading people, reading energy, reading vibes, and how that was like a form of common sense growing up. Have we lost that?
Yeah, I think to a certain extent we have. I think that the art of communication has really disappeared by and large. A lot of people don't communicate as well, which means that they don't understand human nature. They don't put themselves in other people's shoes, so they don't have as much empathy. Now, personally, I blame that on a lot of technology, on the rise of technology, especially the rise of cell phones. Back then, we didn't have cell phones. We had the rotary phones where you pick it up and you turn around. What you see on Sanford and Son if you watch that type of thing.
Right.
I think what happens is the more we get connected to the world through technology, the less we're connected to the world through personality. and through personal involvement. So, you can have a friend around the world while you're playing PlayStation, playing your 2K, 20 or whatever the case may be, but the person person next door to you, you really don't have a relationship with. You don't know how to stand and have a conversation with for 20 minutes. And I think that's what causes the rise in people, the road rage that we have, and the rage against people, and people wanting to kill each other, because you don't know how to have a discussion, be on opposite ends of a discussion without having it feel like you're being threatened personally. And that is a real shame.
It truly is. We lose out on the true value of communication, and then we lose track of the actual signals that you need to pick up on when it comes to understanding. See, I can tell the difference between something that somebody's saying to me that I'm really not going to need versus something that somebody's saying to me that I absolutely need. So I need to drop what I'm doing and paying attention. And it doesn't matter if I'm at the bus stop or I'm on an elevator or in a conference room. I can pick up on cues because I've communicated. I'm also a product of communication. There's a time and a place to listen, and there's a time and place to understand. Talk is not always cheap. What you think about that?
I think you're absolutely right, man. You have to pay attention, and you have to know. Let me tell you, I was with a couple of friends of mine, and we went to a spot in Virginia where we were playing pool. It's me and two other brothers were playing pool. So during the process of that, we had, it's a couple of white people in the spot. So there was this one white lady and her boyfriend. They were both drunk. So she comes over to the table, of course, and her boyfriend comes over to the table as well, and we're playing. First, they start a conversation. They just chatting, and so we're joking and chatting with them. And then there was a specific point when everything changed. You could feel the change in the room, but I mean, it's not something like lights flash. It was just a moment where you can feel between two people that something changed. And she started leaning over the pool table and exposing herself a little bit. And then her boyfriend turned around, and you can see his eyes. The eyebrows just changed just a bit. And it was at that moment that all three of us said, you know what, it's time for us to go. So, it's being able to read people like that and paying attention to the details. That's what we don't do. Pay attention to the details so that you can avoid situations that are not going to work in your favor. Had we stayed there, I can guarantee you there would have been a problem. There would have been a miscommunication, and a discrepancy. But being able to pay attention to that, and then not being so full of pride where you feel like, I got to stay here because, I'm a man and I got to do this. Not being so full of pride and saying, what, the situation doesn't warrant me staying here and going forward and being in a potential way of a problem. Let me just remove myself so that life can go on and nobody has a problem. So the evening was uneventful, but it was uneventful because we paid attention to communication, we paid attention to body language, and we understood the time. We took time to pay attention to what was going on, and that avoided what I'm quite sure could have been a tragic evening.
Right, and so essentially, the type of upbringing that you had, where it wasn't technology everywhere at your disposal. You had to pay attention to people. You had to know your surroundings, and you had to find a way to survive. Because if you had no basis of understanding, then living in a dangerous neighborhood, you could succumb to that. And so that made you into a type of person that was able to figure out the things that really matter in life. Okay. Now, can we talk about what was middle school like for you? We recently talked to a teacher who described a very grim reality of middle schools and metropolitans across the country. What was middle school like for you growing up?
I don't think middle school was that bad. I think things are, it all depends on your perspective and what you're putting into. So for me, middle school I went to Jordan Elmont, which was right across the street from my apartment building. It was normal. You had young kids who were into a whole bunch of different things. People, you had some. Now, remember, around this time, that's when crack started to become popular. So, we were losing, our principal was on crack. We were losing a lot of adults and children and mothers and parents on crack. But there was also other programs. We had school programs like school lunch throughout the summertime. We had, they were putting money in the school system. So at that time, for me, middle school was good. It was the same sort of thing. I had gotten a little bit older. That's when, you start feeling yourself a little bit. but you know, it was about playing basketball for me. It was about education. I was always a nerd, so I was really into learning and reading and, you know, doing that sort of thing. And then, you know, just trying to be popular, trying to learn about, you know, relationship with girls and all that. So it wasn't, even though I was in the middle of what some people would say is a hard knock life. You know, I think, you know, life was still good at the time. You know, it had its problems. You know, I had my fights, I had my discrepancies, I had my issues. You know, I saw some things that I don't really think children should see. But uh, by and large, you know, I can't knock it. I think most of that made me who I am today. So
Right.
you know, I'm not ashamed of it.
Oh no, absolutely not, because those things gave you a certain brand of an education,
Absolutely.
and that's what I'm trying to raise awareness about in this portion of the conversation, is that you get a level of education that's separate from academics. It's totally separate from academics, and you get a lot of it. You at a young age are able to see what's for you and what's not for you, and those types of lessons, they carry off long into your life, because you saw,
Mhm.
maybe at 10 or 12 years old, the effects of drugs, or the effects of a dysfunctional household. It was right there in front of you. You crossed the street to avoid these things, and
Yeah.
so, by you having a variety of experiences like that, it gave you what people call common sense. And people say that common sense is not so common. So if you have it, that's a gift, and it's something to be proud of. And so what was high school like for you then?
Oh man, high school. I love high school. High school was probably, besides college, I even enjoyed it more than college. And just before I go there, man, just back on there, people must realize that those years that we were just talking about, the middle school years, those are the informative decision making years. Those are the years that children are really making the decision on who they're going to be, who they're going to hang around. So make sure that you pay attention to children, especially in those years, because that's really forming who you're going to see, you know, when they get to high school and beyond. But high school was great for me. You know, I went to Theodore Roosevelt in the Bronx. Well, I went to more than one high school because, quite honestly, I grew up in group homes. But my high school years was great. I went to high school in the Bronx. I was a basketball star. Now by that time, I had found out a little bit about myself. So I was on a lot of things, and I was a nerd. So, you know, I'm on the basketball team. I'm on the debate team. I'm on the Shakespeare team. That's when I started doing my acting thing. You know, I was really involved in school. To me, up until I was in the 12th grade, I had never missed a day of school. Rain, snow, sleet, hail. I was always in school because I valued that. And it wasn't because somebody was over my head with it. It was just something that I learned to value, something that I enjoyed, being around people, but also, you know, just learning, just learning. I don't know. I just always wanted to learn.
Right.
High school was good. High school were good years. You know, I made a lot of mistakes. I did a lot of stupid things, but I was able to grow from it. And I was
Well,
fortunate that, you know, a lot of what happens today wasn't really happening then, as far as you know, scuffles with security and police. I think that has grown. You know, it's always been there, but I think it's grown tremendously now. So, you know, back then I had a little bit more freedom to be myself, if that makes sense.
yeah. Oh, no, no, no. It makes a lot of sense to me, and it seems like you were born with the gift of vision. And I want to know, how did you maintain that vision in different group homes as you were growing up? And the reason why I ask you that question is because when you're able to separate what's for you and what's not for you, even though you're going to make mistakes along the way, but you're able to, by and large, stay on a positive track. You're doing something that's a little bit different than what a certain percentage of your peers are doing. And when you end up living in a group home type of environment, it's very easy to become sort of like a bad person. How did you keep your head on straight?
You know, I think that anywhere you go, if there's at least one person that you have in your life that is there to be a mentor to you, it will save a whole lot of heartache, you know. And I was fortunate because even in the midst of all that, there was always at least one person there that would mentor me, one person there that, you know, that just wouldn't let me, you know, just go all out and do all the things. They would always pull me to the side and say, hey man, no, you can't do this, man. You know, you being a knucklehead, and speak to me like, you know, just speak to me straight up, and was real. For me in the group homes, it was a man named Jamil Green. Great brother, great brother. So, you know, for me, you know, I was blessed in that, you know, I made, like I said, I made some really bad decisions, but there was always someone there, at least one person there. So, you know, I've tried to be that same thing to other people, you know, always be that motivating factor, always be that person that says, look, man, I know you're here now, but, you know, you don't have to stay here. You can make some choices and some decisions that will change things. I've had that. And that really helped me. And that's, I mean, you know, I can only attribute it to, you know, to being blessed, you know, God, and having people in my life that, over a period of times when I really needed someone, was there.
Right. I had a mentor who once told me, Cedric, in life, you're going to make mistakes, but you just want to avoid terminal mistakes, mistakes that are either going to end your life or tear your life apart. If there's a young man or a young woman out there listening today, what is one lesson that you would like to pass down, either from one of your mentors or from yourself?
Man, one of the things that Jamil Green told me that is always stuck in my life, and has been one of the biggest pieces of advice that he gave me, that I still go through this day, is he said, you have to have before, during, and after thinking. You can't just make decisions. You just can't run out there and do what you want to do on partial information. You have to think about how the situation affects you and those around you before, during, and after. And that really helped change my life, because first of all, it stops you and makes you think. You know, some of the times we just don't think. So if I were passing something along besides that, I would just say, take time to think. You know, gather your thoughts. You don't have to say everything that comes to your mind. You don't have to do everything in the heat of the moment. Take a step, take your time, and think about how this is going to affect you now, and how this is going to affect you in the future, and then make your decision and be ready to deal with the consequences.
Elliott, you're already a very quotable man today, and I appreciate you. I'm sure my audiences are going to appreciate you. And I also think about the thousands of youth who are in foster care, and also youth who are in group homes today. I've visited several group homes in my life. In fact, I've worked at a few different group homes, and they can always use different pieces of wisdom. You know, is there hope after life in group homes?
Oh man, absolutely. You have to understand, you know, my experience, I went into the group home when I was 12 years old, having problems at home, decided I was too grown to be there. So I lived on the street for a little while, ended up through the system, blah, 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 ended up in a group home.
Hold on. You were living on the streets at 12 years old?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh man, it was scary. It was scary. I don't even think I realized how scary it was. Now I realize how really scary it was. At the time, I just felt like I just felt rejected. I just felt like, you know, it was just me. Nobody loved me. Nobody cared, and I was in the street. And that was it. I slept in the hallways of apartment buildings. So my aunt lived in a apartment building, and she wouldn't let me in the house because my mom had called her and told her don't let me in. And so I would just go into the apartment building, go up to the 12th floor, and just sleep in the hallway. You know, and that would be that. And then during the day, I had my Walkman. That was my one constant. Back then, we had the little Sony Walkman. I had 3 cassette tapes. You know, James Brown and 2 other people, In Vogue, and I think Sinead O'Connor.
Right.
And I did that. And during the day, I went out and tried to be around my friends and just drive, go through the city because I had my little train pass. And at night, I would just sleep in the hallways. Wow. Until the day I got fed up with it and said, I can't do this no more. Turned myself into the family court. They called my mom up, and that's, we ended up, and that's when I ended up going to a childcare facility in upstate New York called St. Christopher. Stayed there for about a year. Then they released me back to the city, and then I was in a few group homes, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Far Rockaway, and spent my time in the group homes until I went off to college.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I want people to understand that group homes, while the overall intention is positive, is very positive, but sometimes the individual attention that people need on group homes, it's really hard for them to get that. And so when you live in that type of environment and you make it out of that type of an environment and you decide to not only do something positive, but you decide to get into levels of greatness with your life, that is truly remarkable. And I hope that we get to unpack some more of your brain today, because in retrospect, somebody out there is going through some of the things that you talked about. I mean, millions of kids across America are going through, several of the things you talked about today, whether it be growing up in a tough neighborhood, living on your own at 12 years old, that's remarkable. And then growing through group homes. Group homes are notorious for, you go there and you might get a good mentor, but at the same time, you might be getting beat up for no reason. Somebody stole your soap, somebody stole your sneakers, you know what I mean? And just petty things, crab in a barrel type of mentality. You got a lot of things to overcome. But if I'm hearing you correctly, you took high school as an opportunity to excel, and you were on the debate team. How did the debate team influence your outlook on life?
Wow, it helped me be able to put my words together. It really helped me be able to learn to express myself, to learn to argue, but not just to argue with people, but to learn to argue a point, to be able to learn to research. If you have an idea, you had to research, you had to figure out what it was. You usually are pro or con. So if you got chosen on pro, you would have to figure out all of the things that were pro about it, but you also had to foresee all of the cons, so that when the other side of the team would go up and say, whatever their position was, you would be able to debate them. You would be able to go back in and you would be able to overcome arguments. So the debate team was great, even though I didn't know it at the time. It would be one of the things that would help develop my speaking skills and my research skills. So, the debate team for me was crucial, and I enjoyed it. My wife says I love to argue anyway. I love to be on the argument. So that kind of.
Did you ever have to debate W.E.B. Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington?
No, we didn't. Most of the stuff that we debated and were about civil issues that were going on. Goodness, that was a long time ago. We're talking 30 plus years ago. But most of the stuff that we debated had to do with current events, and usually it had to do with some type of either current event or some type of civil event that had happened in either the United States or somewhere overseas along the lines of history. So not so much those type of things. My debate coach, I think he was really preparing us more for not just to be in one track mind on people and different ideologies, but have sort of a worldview.
Right. Did you take a senior trip?
Oh yeah, but I missed it. Like I said, I was in a group home, so I didn't really have a lot of finances back then. The group home wasn't paying for that, so I missed the senior trip. But it was no big deal. No big deal. I did the prom, and I can't lie, I had a great year, even throughout all of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. I don't miss not going to the senior trip.
Without a doubt, you still make the best of things, and then you're like, breath of fresh air. I'm actually some sort of a young man now because I graduated high school. How did that feel when you made it through and you graduated from high school? How did that feel?
Man, it was great, and actually the transition from high school. So coming from where I went to Hamilton College, which is a small Ivy League college, one of the top 25, blah, blah, blah. So the transition from high school to going to college was great because to me it was almost like life was about to open up. Something I had never considered. I didn't even consider going to college, and ended up going to one of the top colleges.
Wow.
So graduating high school was beautiful for me. It was sort of bittersweet because I was in my high school I was the man. I had my picture on. I was at one point I won the title of Mr. Bronx. I had my picture on the first floor of the high school. So, I was the man back then.
Wow.
And I was kind of going to miss that because I knew I probably wasn't going to be the man like that no more. But, it was really a great time. It was really a great time.
We're having a great conversation with Mr. Elliott Eddie. And this is only the beginning. This is the first half of the conversation. We'll be right back to discover more of what this gentleman did and more of his philosophies on life. We're having a great time. You guys will be right back with Mr. Elliott Eddie. America's Next Motivator. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern. America's Next Motivator. Hosted by Cedric Riley and sponsored by our good friends at 4D Healthware. And we're back. I want to know, Eddie, Mr. Eddie, how did you get into one of the top colleges in your area?
It's crazy. I was a basketball player in high school, and the brother was pretty good, and
What's good? What's good?
Yeah, I had little skills, Michael Jordan ain't got nothing on me, so that's all I'm saying. But anyway, I was playing basketball. We were playing a game one day, school basketball game, and after the game, a brother just walked up to me. His name was Keith Boston. He just walked up to me and said, "Hey, how would you like to go to college and play basketball?" I said, "Sure." And next thing I know, he had put in a word at Hamilton College. I filled out a little application or so, and I ended up in college. I mean, it was I had no plans on it, And at the time when I applied for that school, I started applying for a bunch of schools. I applied for the HBCUs, and I applied for the state schools. And quite honestly, I got turned down by everybody except for one of the top colleges in the United States. So,
wow.
Yeah,
that was meant to be. That was meant to be, and it seems like the universe was on your side, because as I listen to your story, I'm seeing somebody who was able to identify a way to grow up despite everything you had been through. So I have to think that the universe was on your side when it came time for you to figure out a pathway as an adult.
Yeah, it was definitely tough. I don't like saying things like this just because, I don't want to make it seem like, I'm trying to be something big, but it is something you have to overcome adversities. A lot of people get stuck because, a lot of things happen to people, and you can either take the attitude, well, this is just beating me down and I just can't do it. I just can't push. I can't go anymore. But, to me, I've always kind I've not accepted that. I've always been stubborn. And in these cases, being stubborn actually paid off, because I just wouldn't accept it. I just wouldn't lay down. I wouldn't give up. I would always say, you know what? Yeah, I got slapped down. Yeah, I got this beat down, but I'm getting back up and I got to do something. So I might as well try to do the best.
Right. So it gets to the point where you got to be strong. And at that point, it's not being stubborn, it's being strong, because that's what's required of you. We know the statistics. A lot of people that go through the things that you've been through, they don't end up getting to a very positive place. And you did that because you were being strong. So, okay, you become an adult now. And what was college like? I want you to open some eyes out there about what college was like for you. How did it impact your worldview? How did it open you up as a young man?
Well, college was very interesting, and it turned out to be a blessing to me. But I'm from the inner city, so most of my life I had not been around white people. Okay. I had not been around varieties of white people. You might have had a teacher or so, here and there inside the school, but that was really the extent. So when I go to Hamilton College, we're talking about a predominantly white college. We're talking about, a student body of maybe 1,600 people, less than 1% of them, Black, less than 3% of them of any type of multicultural ethnic background. So, I'm in the mix now. So, I'm up in way upstate New York. I'm at college. I'm around a whole bunch of different people. Uh, Everybody wasn't favorable to me. But I had to learn how to, I had to learn how to adjust. I had to learn how to deal with people. And then, when you're in college, you're sort of on your own. The good thing about college is it's a preparation ground. To me, it's kind of a bubble, but it is a preparation bubble for you to really hone and learn about the type of individual you are and what type of man or woman you're going to be for the rest of your life. So I learned to navigate through that. I made some friendships, inside and outside of my comfort level. I learned how to deal with people who hated you for no reason, people who would try to hurt you for no reason, whether they look like you or not, and just learn how to navigate through that and still get the job done. The job was to get the degree. The job was to do the list of things that you had to do, the laundry list to get the degree,
Right.
and learn how to live life at the same time and learn who you were going to be. So, to me, college was an eye opener. It was definitely something that helped me grow as a person and really helped me mold who I was going to be and how I was going to relate to people in this world.
What do you think about the lack of diversity in the school system and different communities around America for people of all different backgrounds? What are your thoughts about the lack of diversity in the school systems, and maybe even just in our communities in general? What do you think about the lack of diversity that results in like high level culture shock when you get into a place like college?
Yeah, there's something that can be said for in favor of it, but mostly I think that it can be an injustice to the person. All right, so now it's good to be around people that you're comfortable with, that look like you and grow up, and it feels comfortable, and that's good. However, the world does not look like that. I think that if at a younger age, more people had a chance to interact with other people, there was more diversity, not just on our part, but on every ethnicity part. On white people and Asian people, people from Africa, people from Europe, all of these different groups that we're going to have to deal with, we're going to have to work with, we're going to have to, live around. I think it would be great if there was a level of diversity so that we can begin to understand, begin to talk with each other. Because now, I mean, if you put a lack of communication or less communication skills and a lack of diversity, you turn around and you look at the problems that we have now. People are not as open to other points of views. They're not as open to other people's ways of life. They're not understanding people's idiosyncrasies and how they grow up or what their culture does. So, it's a hard thing. I grew up in an all black neighborhood and I loved it. I was comfortable there. However, when I went to college, I learned that, I didn't know as much as I thought knew. I didn't know people as well as I should have been prepared. So it can be a blessing, but it can also be, a curse as well.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm taking that and I'm appreciating it. And so, in it all, you took those experiences and what did you become? What did you become in the grand scheme of things?
uh, so I took those experiences and I rolled with them. In some instances, I became a man who refused to lose. There was times when I became a drug addict. There were times when I became unruly. I became a lot of things. I went through a lot of emotions, but ultimately, when you put all of those things together, it turned me into the sort of man that says, you know what, you and anyone else can overcome adversity. You can actually chart a course, and you can actually turn all of those bad things, all of those feelings of rejection, all of those feelings of anger and depression and hurt, and you can turn that into something beautiful if you allow yourself to continue and not quit. If you allow yourself to get back, sometimes you get knocked down and sometimes you have to cry. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to do that. What it's not okay to do is to let that be the end of you. I can't tell you how many times I got knocked down, how many times I had to overcome, how many times I've cried my eyes out. But then after all of that was done, I had to say, you know what? I can't stop. I got to go forward. What's next? What am I going to do next? And it turned me into the person that wants to really share that I just have to share that with other people, that you can achieve, you can do it. I know life is hard. I know things are unfair. I know things that, you know, the tables, the cards are stacked against you. That is true. All of that is true. But you can still find your way out of that. You can still turn around and say, you know what? I'm not going to stop. This is what I love, and this is what I'm going to do. And that's what I really try to, you know, in all that I do, I try to put that measure of information, love, and compassion in what I do, and do something that would give that thought and that understanding back to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to do a screen share right now for our audience, and then we'll have a brief conversation about the screen share, okay? Give me 1 second.
Because when I was 6 years old, I saw the movie Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, some of you seen it. It's about a bunch of zombies that overrun a town to eat all of the people's brains.
What was that?
All right, that was all right. So I don't know how many people are familiar with Toastmasters.
Okay.
Toastmasters International, which is it's an international organization that teaches communication and leadership skills. So they have this competition called the World Championship of Public Speaking. That's when you get about 35,000 people from around the world. They go head to head on public speaking in a public speaking competition, 5-minute speeches, until you dwindle it down to the top 10 speakers in the world, and then they go somewhere and compete for who's going to be first, second, and third in the world of speaking. So I've competed in that. That was the first year I competed. I won top. I was the top 27th person in the world. Came back to Virginia, and I was giving a speech. I was just giving a speech basically at a conference, a Toastmasters conference, and that was part of the speech that I was giving. It was it was a fun time, man.
Yeah, that was a funny clip. I mean, just that 1 minute was gripping. It was entertaining. It was funny. And so essentially you became a speaker.
Yeah, I went back the second time and won top 10 in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you do other things as well? Did you develop any products? Did you develop any services?
Oh, absolutely. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm what I call a serial entrepreneur.
Okay.
So I've developed a bunch of, besides going and doing motivational speaking, I've developed products. I've created my own board game, which is called the Entrepreneur Game. It's the world's first and only STEM accredited entrepreneur board game on the market. And actually, I created 4 different versions of it. So I have 4 board games. I've started several businesses. I have a brand that I've started for cooking. I have 6 books. As a filmmaker, I have 7 films with worldwide distribution. I do a lot of things.
Whoa!
Yeah, you didn't see that one on. Hey, you did your homework.
Yeah,
to find that.
Have you ever seen a cartoon where the character's being told so many things and his eyes start rolling in his head? Like, hey, yeah. I want people to understand that you essentially became a mogul in your own right, and that's one of the things that makes your story so incredible. So can we unpack that a little bit? So you created board games. What's inside the box?
Okay, actually, if you can notice, you can see it right behind me. It's called the Entrepreneur Board Game.
Okay.
And the game is it's an entertaining, it's fun, an interactive way of learning how to create your own home base or brick and mortar business, and then learning how to grow and expand that business into an empire. And you do that through marketing, through investing, through negotiation, communication, decision-making, critical thinking, and a host of 21st century skills. Okay. So the idea is to start your own business, name your own business, say whether it's home base or brick and mortar, and start it, and then go through the process of learning, making decisions. As you go around the board, you get cards, and each card is based on a real entrepreneur situation. So you would have to take that card and include that into your journey and figure out how you're going to get around it. So you may get a card that's a losses, that say you say something bad on social media and it goes viral in a terrible way and you lose business. You might get one that says if you can create a logo for your company right now in the next 60 seconds, you'll get $20,000. You know, so it'll always be something dealing with business and how to grow and build your business. Because I wanted people to learn that you can take your talents and skills and you can create something on your own. And then I figured out once that happened, and you know, it did very well. I did crowdfunding. The project was funded in less than 5 hours, sold in 9 countries around the world. So I went back and I started being a little bit more specific and created some more. So I have that. I also have a Spanish version of the game. I have a version called Vetrepreneurs, which is for veterans coming back and you know, getting them into starting their own business. And I have a version called Rise of the Returning Citizen, which is for incarcerated and recently released people to show them how to start their own businesses so that they can, you know, earn a living wage and you know, really begin to live life. Because, you know, it's hard when you get out of prison with some felonies. You know, it's like the world has its, I won't say that, but it's like the world is against you.
Right. Where can people find your board games at?
Oh, well, it's on, of course, it's on my website, educationalgamestore.com. They're on Amazon. It's on Walmart.com. And it's on a couple of other internet-based sites. Been trying to get them in stores, but, you know, there are no more toy stores. So that's been a little bit challenging.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm working on something great with this one. So soon it'll be in all of the school systems as well.
Wow. You said educationalgamestore.com?
Yes, sir. Educationalgamestore.com.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Teaching young people and even teaching adults in a game style concept is something that speaks to our need for 3-dimensional concepts. See, it's one thing for me to read off of a piece of paper and try to memorize that, but it's a whole nother thing when there's a tangible box and it has tangible things inside of it that I need to take, handle, hold, look at, you know, read and interact and take care of it when it's done. You know, those are sorts of things that make lessons really stick. So that's an incredible thing that you did there. But you also said that you created some books. What are your favorites out of your own collection?
Oh man, well, I have a few different books. Most of them are nonfiction. I have one fiction book. So my books were right after I won the top 10 speaker in the world. I came back and wrote a book called Picture Perfect Presentations, which goes to teach people how to develop a speech. You know, how to be able to take an idea, turn that into a speech, and effectively communicate that to any group that you're looking at, whether it's a large group or whether it's just a group of your peers or at work. I have a book. So because I've done so many movies, I came back and created a book to show people how to turn their stories into movies, which is called How to Turn Your Stories into Movies.
Right.
Which shows you just basically how to go from concept to creation on a story, so you can begin to tell your own story and not have to wait for somebody else to tell your story. I have a book that I'm getting ready to release on August 1st, which is called Blueprint to Prosperity, which shows people how to, and actually this one is a biblical-based book, which shows you how to create a business, basically lay down a business plan, how to create and fight for your business. And one of my favorites is the only fiction book that I ever wrote, which is called, it's the first one of a trilogy. It's called Demigods Among Us. And this is where I get into my other little thing. So it's about a black program government, a black label government program, which genetically modifies people and creates a hybrid being that wants to take over and destroy the earth. And 6 college students that have the job of stopping them and saving the earth. That one is pretty exciting, and it deals with all of the science fiction things that I like to think of, and a few things that people might call conspiracy theories or conspiracy realism, depending on your perspective.
Yeah, at this point, I'm thinking you're a genius because it sounds like some of what's happening today.
Yeah, you know, it's yeah. You know, there's a lot. You have to understand, man, the things that we know about is only a portion of the things that are going on. By the time we find out about something, by the time we find out about some discovery, trust that discovery has been happening for the last couple of decades. We are just now finding out about it in the general public. So,
right.
Yeah, people. I think one issue is people don't have their minds open enough to understand that there's more happening around us than we actually know. So we like to shut things down and say, "Man, that's conspiracy theory, man. That ain't nobody's doing nothing like that." And lo and behold, I just saw an article that was verified the other day that the FDA gave permission to a couple of companies to send out genetically modified mosquitoes. So just think about this. If in 2020, they give the permission to send out genetically modified mosquitoes, what was happening in the 70s? What was happening in the 60s? Because genetic modification didn't just pop up in 2019. I mean, we heard about, I'm not going to get on that whole thing, but just people keep your minds open. There's a lot of stuff going on in this world, and sometimes we're getting played.
So it sounds like we need to have you on for another episode where we can really get deep.
Yeah, you can play that Area 51 music behind it.
Yeah, to be real eerie, real spooky. No, I think that's great. I think it's very important to think outside the box and to be a big thinker. One of my philosophies is that in order for us to change our realities of a people, sometimes it comes down to pure make-believe. It comes down to you creating things that don't already exist. And a lot of the time, other people, they might not believe in you. They might not see what you see. That's why I said you were a visionary. I could tell 40 minutes ago that you were a visionary. And here it is. You explaining to us how you brought several of your visions to life. That's very important if we're ever to change the climate of our societies around the world. At some point, we've got to invent new things. At some point, we've got to create new things. We can't create new outcomes with the same things that we've been using. So I'm a major supporter of people like you. And when I say people like you, I mean people who have decided to be an inventor, decided to be an innovator. And I also want to know, where can people find some of your books?
Well, all of the books are on Amazon. I'm actually in the middle of creating a new website amongst all the website that'll feature the new books, but all of my books are on Amazon. If you just go to Amazon under books, and you can probably just type my name in, and you'll see a bunch of my books come up. One of the books that I'm very proud of is called Passion to Profit. Which is my entrepreneurial book, which teaches you how to teaches you everything about how to create your businesses, all the information that is hard to find that people don't know, like what's the difference between LLCs and sole proprietorships and S corps. How do you set those up? What are articles of incorporation? How do you get a DUNS number? How do you get corporate credit? All of the information that we as people need that is not readily available, that people will charge you for. That's what I put in the book. Hey,
yeah, we were talking about how you have to roll with changes in life. Hey, my daughter had to be a part of this episode. Say hi.
Hey, there you go.
Hey. So as we wrap up, say hi.
Hi. She ready for her close up.
Yeah. So before she starts tearing up my whole studio, I have 3 questions that I want to ask you, and if you can answer those within a couple minutes, it's something that we always do. What is survival to you?
Survival is adaptation. Survival is being able to see the times, seeing what's going on, and being able to adapt so that you don't conform to the times, but that you're able to be yourself in any time.
Right. Okay. Baby, that's you on the screen. And what is success to you?
Oh man, success is being able to complete and do what you dream of in your heart. Whatever it is that your gift is, or whatever's in your heart, being able to follow after that and being able to achieve different levels of that is success.
Okay. And what is greatness to you?
Greatness is being able to take what it is that you have, your unique gifts, your talents, your point of view, and being able to give that back to somebody else to help them grow and become the best that they can be.
What's next for you? Elliott?
Oh man, I'm gonna just keep creating. Every time I see something, hey, we got the whole gang in here. I'm just going to keep creating. You know, every time I see something that I think that I can achieve and it's going to be a benefit to the world, and I'm going to go after it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to help people. Then I'm going to turn around and show everybody how to do what I did.
Without a doubt. You know, like I've said, and I'll continue to say about you even after this show, you have a great story. Your work has been respectable and it's commendable. I recognize it. And you are one of America's next motivators. I would like to welcome you to the Pride Empowerment Network, which is the group of people who have invariably come to share their stories here on our platform, to influence young people, to influence young adults, to influence adults, and continue forward with the successful mind frame. I really appreciate you today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. So I look forward to following up with you after this episode because you know you have a great mind. And this has been another installment of America's Next Motivator, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everybody.